Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we bring you a powerful tale of transformation, where a Thanksgiving prank leads to unexpected changes and self-discovery. Caroline thought she was preparing for a warm family dinner, only to be left heartbroken by those she loved most. But through this painful experience, she finds new connections, a passion for healthy living, and the courage to walk away from the past. Join us as we explore how life's most difficult moments can open the door to new beginnings. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories and start this journey with us today. It was Thanksgiving, a time for family to come together. And for me, it was always a special day. As a hospital pharmacist, I spent most of my time immersed in medications, prescriptions, and the care of patients. But Thanksgiving was different. It was the one time of the year when everything paused. The demands of the hospital, the endless streams of patients, the long hours, they all seemed to melt away as I focused on one thing: family. My name is Emily Turner, and I had worked as a pharmacist in Chicago for over a decade. It wasn't just a job to me, it was a calling. I found comfort in the routines of pharmacy, in providing someone with the right medication, explaining side effects, and watching them heal. But there was one thing that remained consistent throughout all these years. The holidays were always a time for my family. I lived for those moments, even if they were few and far between. That afternoon, as I checked the last prescription for the day, I glanced at the clock, 3 in the afternoon. It was exactly the time I had planned to finish my shift. I was looking forward to this Thanksgiving dinner, a rare opportunity for my family to be together. This year, it felt especially important. After all, my mother, Susan, and my younger sister, Lily, had not been as present lately. Each of us pulled in different directions by our own lives. My mom had remarried, and though I had accepted my stepfather, Walter, after the passing of my father, things had shifted. The dynamics in our family had subtly changed, and not for the better. I finished my shift early, a rare treat, and hurried out of the hospital, eager to start the dinner preparations. I had spent days planning the perfect meal: roast turkey, potato gratin, pumpkin pie, the full Thanksgiving spread. I had gone to the market the day before, picked up everything I needed, and woke up early to start cooking. This was supposed to be a time for connection, for family bonding. I was hopeful, even excited, that this Thanksgiving would be different. But little did I know, it would turn into one of the most painful experiences of my life. As I drove home, I thought back to the changes in our family over the past few years. My mother's marriage to Walter had seemed like a fresh start. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like something was slipping away. My sister, Lily, had grown distant, too. Unlike me, she thrived in the spotlight, accumulating thousands of followers on Instagram with her flashy posts and influencer lifestyle. For me, life had always been more about the quiet moments. I found joy in the simple acts: a patient's smile, a thank you after a long day. Lily, on the other hand, was all about likes, followers, and views. It was a world I never really understood. I arrived home to finish the dinner preparations. Checking the clock again, it was 5:30 p.m., half an hour before our agreed-upon dinner time. I set the table for 3. I could almost feel the warmth of the evening, the laughter, the food, the stories. At least, that's what I imagined. As the evening wore on, though, things didn't go as planned. I called my mother to check in. The phone rang, but no one picked up. After several attempts, she finally answered. Her voice rushed. "I'm sorry, but I have to take care of an urgent matter. Ashley's friend has an emergency. I'll be late, but I've already prepared everything for the dinner. We'll come soon." The weight of those words hit me immediately. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Over the last few months, it seemed like everything took priority over family time. Ashley's social media commitments, my mom's new friends, they always seemed to come before the simple act of sitting down together as a family. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. But I didn't say anything. I just sighed and hung up. I continued with the meal preparations, focusing on the food as a way to distract myself. The turkey was beautifully browned. The sides were coming together. And the pie was almost ready. I checked the time again. 7 p.m. Still no sign of my mom or sister. The food was getting cold. And my mind began to race. What was going on? By 7:30, I was desperate. I tried calling again, but my calls went unanswered. Then, the doorbell rang. My heart lifted. Finally, they were here. I opened the door, but no one was there. Instead, there was an envelope sitting on the doorstep. I picked it up, confused, and opened it. The letter inside was in my mother's handwriting. We went to the upscale restaurant. The Grand. Enjoy your dinner alone. I stood frozen in shock, trying to process what had just happened. After all the effort, all the love I had poured into this meal, they had chosen to go to a restaurant instead. And why leave me a letter like this? I felt my world shatter as I tried to make sense of it all. Just as I was standing there, lost in my thoughts, I heard giggling from the living room. The closet door flew open, and my mother and sister, laughing hysterically, jumped out. They were filming me, laughing at my stunned expression, relishing the moment. My sister, Lily, was holding up her phone, capturing every second of my confusion for her YouTube channel. It was all for the views, for the followers, for entertainment. To them, this was just another joke. But to me, it was a cruel betrayal. This is a prank for my YouTube channel, my mom said, catching her breath, a wicked grin on her face. It's a Thanksgiving special. Isn't it great? My mind was spinning, and my heart ached. I stood there, still, unable to process the enormity of what had just happened. They didn't care about the meal, about the effort, about the time I had spent in the kitchen. They cared about getting attention, about their own entertainment. Lily turned the camera toward herself, her voice shifting into her influencer tone. Everyone, thank you for watching. Today's target is my serious sister, Emily. Happy Thanksgiving. Her voice was full of glee, as though she had accomplished something amazing. And then it hit me. They weren't just mocking me, they were mocking everything I believed in. Everything I held dear: family, togetherness, love. They were all reduced to nothing more than a joke for their online audience. I felt a surge of anger. But it wasn't just anger. It was a deep sadness. A realization that this wasn't just one bad night. This was the culmination of years of being dismissed, of being the outsider in my own family. I looked at the cold, uneaten meal, everything I had spent the day preparing, all the love I had put into it, and it felt like it had all been for nothing. Isn't this fun? My mother asked, eagerly waiting for my reaction. I stood there, staring at them, and then slowly, I tore the letter in two. The sound of the paper ripping echoed through the quiet house. And it felt like something inside me was breaking too. As the pieces of the torn letter fell to the floor, the silence in the room became deafening. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This wasn't just a prank anymore. It was a betrayal that cut deep into the fabric of everything I had believed in. This was my family, or at least, the family I thought I had. Lily's face twisted in surprise, her hand still holding the phone as she stared at me. She had clearly expected a different reaction. Something lighter, perhaps, a laugh, a smile, maybe even a fake acceptance of the absurdity of the situation. But I didn't give her that. I didn't give them what they wanted. What are you doing, Emily? She exclaimed, her voice tinged with frustration. You're ruining everything. The footage, the video, the prank, it's all ruined now. Her words stung, but it was the look on her face that hurt the most. It wasn't just shock or disbelief. It was a hint of annoyance. As if I were the one in the wrong for not playing along. I felt my chest tighten, my throat tightening with an anger I could no longer hold in. Do you ever think about how I feel? I asked, my voice low but sharp, the hurt in my tone unmistakable. I took a deep breath, trying to hold on to whatever composure I had left. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for this family? I spent hours preparing this dinner, waking up at 4 in the morning to cook a meal I thought we could share together. And you, I paused, pointing to the cold food on the table. You turned it all into a joke. You made me the punchline. Ashley's eyes narrowed, and I could see her posture stiffen. She raised her hand and waved the camera back at me. You're being too sensitive. It's just a little family prank. Can't you take a joke? Her words were calm, but there was an underlying edge to her voice. She clearly didn't understand, or maybe, she just didn't care. The realization hit me hard. This was her world now. Social media, followers, views, and the constant validation from strangers who didn't care about her, her family, or anything real. Everything I held dear, my values, the quiet traditions of family, and the bonds we were supposed to cherish, seemed so far removed from her reality. It was a harsh and sobering thought. She didn't understand me. She didn't understand what this meal, what this family time, meant to me. Look, she said, shifting the camera toward herself again, her tone already bright and rehearsed. This is entertainment. This is what people love. No one cares about your serious feelings. This is the real world now. I stared at her, and something inside me finally snapped. I couldn't keep playing along. I couldn't pretend anymore. I walked toward the table, my eyes never leaving the food I had so carefully prepared. Turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, all cold now. Ruined. My voice broke as I spoke again, this time with shaking hands. Do you see this? This is what you've done. This is what your prank has cost me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not entirely. I was sad. And I was heartbroken. The anger had burned itself out, leaving only the crushing weight of disappointment. Enough. Emily. My mom suddenly interjected. Her voice trembled, not in apology but in frustration. This was just a bit of fun. A joke. Can't you see that? Let's just laugh about it. It's over now. Let's all move on. But the words felt hollow. My eyes flicked to my mom's face. And it was the first time I saw something different in her, regret. Perhaps. Or maybe realization. She was trying to smooth things over. To get me to forgive them. To go back to the way things were. But I couldn't. I couldn't pretend that nothing had changed. Family isn't about entertaining strangers or getting more followers, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the ache in my heart. Family is about respect, understanding, and being there for each other. But that's not what this is anymore. With one last glance at the cold dinner, I turned and walked out of the room. My footsteps echoed in the silence, and I could feel their eyes on my back. They were waiting for me to give in, waiting for me to forgive them as I always did. But this time, I didn't turn back. The door slammed shut behind me. And for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The cold night air hit me as I stepped outside, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the house I'd just left behind. For a moment, I stood still, letting the chill run over me, grounding me. The familiar streetlights, the quiet houses with their glowing windows, they all felt so distant now. It was strange, how one moment could shift everything. How quickly life could change with a single action. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the turbulence inside me. It wasn't just the prank, or the betrayal that had stung. It was the realization that my family had drifted so far from me, from what I valued, that even the simplest traditions like Thanksgiving dinner had become a backdrop for their self-centered games. I had always been the one who made the effort, who kept things together, and for the first time, I realized that it wasn't mutual. I was alone in that effort, and that was the hardest part to accept. I began walking, not knowing where I was going, but feeling the need to escape, to put as much distance between myself and the hurtful scene I had just left. I walked aimlessly through the quiet streets of the neighborhood, trying to make sense of everything. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. Calls from Mom and Ashley. I didn't want to hear their apologies, their excuses. Not now, not after everything. It was then that I remembered Christine's invitation. 3 days ago, she had messaged me, inviting me to a Thanksgiving party with some old friends from college. I had declined at the time, thinking I'd be with family. Now, ironically, I found myself in a place I hadn't planned. The empty streets seemed to stretch on endlessly. the feeling of loneliness growing with each step. My thoughts drifted back to the friends I hadn't seen in years. Perhaps it was time to reconnect. To remind myself of the people who had truly known me. I stopped in front of a nearby convenience store. Pulling out my phone, the screen glowed faintly in the dark as I saw the list of missed calls and messages from my family. I let out a sigh and scrolled through them quickly. Ignoring them for now, I opened Christine's message and typed a reply. The words feeling awkward at first. Christine, this is sudden, but if it's still possible, may I join your party? I hesitated after hitting send, unsure if it was right to ask after I had turned down the invite before. I stared at the screen, waiting, my heart racing with a mix of hope and fear. Then, the reply came almost immediately. Of course, come on over, we'll be happy to see you. Is everything okay? I felt a rush of relief. She didn't ask questions, just welcomed me without hesitation. I quickly confirmed the address and made my way there. It was only a 20-minute walk, and moving felt like it would help clear my head. The further I walked, the more I found myself shedding the weight of the day, even if it was just for a little while. When I finally arrived at Christine's apartment, I was greeted by bright lights spilling from the windows and the sound of laughter and conversation. For the first time that night, I felt a warmth that wasn't tied to obligation or resentment. Christine opened the door, her face lighting up as she saw me. Carol, you made it, she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. Come on in, we were just about to eat. It's so good to see you. The familiar faces in the living room cheered when they saw me. They had changed over the years, but their smiles were just as I remembered. Emily, Mark, Lisa, friends from college. People who had known me before all of this. Their welcoming energy felt like a balm for the wounds I had been carrying. I sat down with them, taking a plate of warm Thanksgiving food. Turkey, mashed potatoes, and green bean casserole. It felt surreal to be sitting here, with people who didn't need me to be anything other than myself. There was no performance, no expectation, just warmth and real connection. James, who was working in the kitchen, noticed me and smiled. Are you Carol, Christine's famous friend? He asked. I laughed softly and nodded, explaining that I was a pharmacist, but cooking was my hobby. This sparked an interesting conversation between us. James was a chef, and he was preparing to open his own restaurant. As he spoke passionately about his ideas for healthy food, something in me clicked. I could feel myself coming alive again. As if this conversation, this meeting, was exactly what I needed to shake off the heaviness of the day. After the dinner, as I was about to leave, James handed me his business card. I'd love to talk more about menu development. He said, you have such a unique perspective. Given your knowledge as a pharmacist, maybe we could work together. I was taken aback, but also intrigued. I had never thought about combining my pharmaceutical knowledge with cooking. It was an unexpected opportunity, but somehow it felt like the right next step. As I walked away from Christine's party that night, a sense of fulfillment settled over me. The Thanksgiving I had once hoped for, the family dinner, had been replaced by something I had not expected, a connection with old friends, new opportunities, and the warmth of genuine care. The pain I had felt earlier in the evening was still there, but it no longer had the power to consume me. In the days that followed, I found myself returning to the kitchen, joining James in his test kitchen after work, experimenting with healthy recipes, and even starting my blog, Pharma Food. The response was incredible. People appreciated my unique perspective on how food and health could work together. It felt like I had finally found a purpose that blended my knowledge and my passion. As months passed, my blog grew, and with it, my confidence. I spent less time looking back at my broken family dynamics and more time focusing on the future. Eventually, James offered me a partnership in his new restaurant. I hesitated at first, but it was a chance to build something meaningful, not just for myself, but for others too. I took the plunge, reduced my hours as a pharmacist, and dedicated myself to the restaurant. 2 years later, Healthy Delight had become a success. We were even featured on local TV, And I had truly found my place in this new world. The old me, the one who had been trapped in a cycle of disappointment and unappreciation, was gone. I had learned that people and situations change. But that doesn't mean we can't find happiness and fulfillment on our own terms. As I stood there, looking at the restaurant, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the pain, the challenges, and the unexpected turn of events that led me to this new life. I had chosen my path, and it was mine to walk. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you're inspired by this story of resilience and new beginnings, don't forget to subscribe to our Life Stories channel for more heartwarming tales of change and growth.